My favorite TV shows were Miami Vice, Magnum PI, Knight Rider, all this stuff. And the good guys weren't my heroes. The bad guys were. I like the bad guys. I like to say, hey, look, if you want to get a pound of marijuana, which is a lot to a 16, 17-year-old, I get it for this amount. Count my money up. I was like, all right, let's do it. I didn't care about what people thought of me. I didn't care about consequences. I didn't care about the police officers. Police officers didn't scare me. I sold drugs the time I was 16, 17, all the time, the whole time until till the federal government, arrested me when I was 25 years old. So a span of, 6, 7, almost 8 years, selling drugs.
That's a pretty good run.
That's a good run. I put myself in a position for people to set me up. I put myself in a position for the DA to arrest me. I put myself in a position for the prosecutor to want life in prison, and I put myself in a position for the judge to give me 40 years in prison. That was me. In the thick accent, Chad, we go to bad places. I said, look, this is not a bad place. I invite you to my home. We can do business. Please take the guns away. I have friends that are still incarcerated. I got friends doing life in prison for marijuana only. One of my friends, a guy from Cuba, he's been locked up 20-some years. I want him to get out.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Billy Collins.
Matt Doje.
And this is Magician.
And the Jock.
This man right here has been the buzz.
Yeah, man.
All over Facebook, all over Instagram, all over the county.
We've had a lot of people say, hey, you need to bring him on because they've seen you recently released a book. You've got an amazing story from humble beginnings, growing up in Eastern North Carolina, to ultimately getting sentenced to 40 years.
That's right.
The federal penitentiary, then
That's right.
Getting out and all that good stuff. So you went to West Carteret, right?
Went to West Carteret, exactly. I would have went to Croatan. The Croatan would have been there, but
right.
Croatan was built in 96, 97, and I graduated in 96 from West Carteret.
Just to set up and pretty normal beginnings of life, nothing.
If you want to call it normal, yeah. I had a pretty average, life here at the beach, just typical. Hanging out on the beach during the summertime, jet skiing, surfing, skateboarding, all that.
Chasing the tourist girls.
Exactly. So that was all part of it, man. It was all magical, though, man. I love growing up here. I tell people all the time, when you're from Carteret County, you just don't have friends from Carteret County because everybody in North Carolina, they tend to come here to vacation. Mm-hmm. So we have friends from all over. Where I grew up in Goldsboro, Rocky Mount, Wilson, Raleigh, the mountains, people flock here. Mm-hmm. So I had a ton of friends growing up, not just from here, but everywhere.
You share a story in your book where you were at the Beach Music Festival in Emerald Isle?
Yeah.
That was kind of your first taste of making money, you're hauling coolers and stuff like that. So maybe talk about kind of the hustler mentality and then how that led into...
Yeah. Money and fun became synonymous for me at the beach. And what that was, at the Beach Music Festival, being 15 years old, I'm around all these older people. And to me, people that I looked up to. But I'm this young kid walking from the beach one day, and, my dad has a trailer 5-6 blocks from the Beach Music Festival, and as I'm walking back, this guy stopped me. He had these gold chains around his wrist, around his neck, had these gold rings on, and I said, "Hey man, do me a favor. I'll give you this much cash if you load my beer for me."
Did you say he had 2 girls on each arm?
He had a bunch of girls with him, but it was two girls on each arm. So I was like, "Yeah, I help you out." So I helped carry this guy's beer with the girls, and we walk up to the festival, and I'm thinking I'm done from there because there's all these girls in bikinis and all these people just going wild and crazy, and we get to the gates. And, I'm like, "Thank you, mister. Have a good day." And he goes, "Nah, you're not done yet." So he passed me a bracelet to get in.
Yeah.
So from there, I get in. And when I get in, I see all this crazy stuff.
And I grew up there, so it's the Beach Music Festival you're talking 30, 40,000 people.
Huge.
Easy.
It was huge. Just the whole part of the island was just, covered with people. And, it was a special time, I remember previous years, seeing it, but, being inside, it was a different thing for me. But back to this guy that brought me to the Beach Music Festival, he didn't talk down to me, he talked to me. treat me as an equal.
As a peer.
Yeah, and I talk about in the book how my favorite TV shows were Miami Vice, Magnum PI, Knight Rider, all this stuff, and the good guys weren't my heroes. The bad guys were. I like the bad guys. I like the bad guys, and this guy with all this gold stuff, he kind of reminded me of one of these bad guys.
Yeah.
But he was a gentleman. Right. And he was good to me. And after I got done setting the beer down, he gave me a wad of cash, shook my hand, told me to hang out if I wanted to. But I told him, I said, I appreciate it. And I hung out with him for a few minutes. Got a couple of dances with the girls. Also, he gave me a couple of beers. I didn't drink the beers yet because I wasn't drinking at all. But I took the beers, from him, hung out for a little bit. But as soon as I got a chance, I ran back to my house. Got under a trailer, and I pulled out a wagon. And I pulled that wagon back to the Beach Music Festival, and I walked around just telling people, hey, if you want, put your beer in the cooler, I'll carry it for you. Just give me $20. And sure enough, people just started loading their beer on. I just started walking to the gates with a beer, and they'd give me more than $20. So I went back and forth, meeting these people. And the whole time, I'm having a great time meeting all these people. So by the end of the day, I had like over $800. So that was a good for a 15-year-old. And
right.
After that, it was a good summer. it was a good summer. But that was as far as hustling. That was probably the start of it. And,
Which you probably had that mentality for a while. This was your first chance to exercise it. I grew up, I would mow grass. I would just go ask everybody, can I cut your grass? Can I cut your grass? Yeah. Yours sounds a little more glamorous.
Yeah. I don't know about some rolls of beer.
Yeah, well, I tell you, the first hustle I ever had, when I was living in Goldsboro. One time, this older guy down the road, he had a farm. And one time I found one of his pigs down the road. So I picked the pig up and took it back to him. So when I took it back to him, he gave me $10 taking the pig back. So during that summer, whenever I needed money, I go steal one of his pigs. And I carry it back to him.
That's a Goldsboro hustle.
Yeah, I said, hey man, I know when your pigs got out, man. He'd give me $10 more. I mean, I did like 5-6 times. But to me, that was like, it was wrong, but to me, that was like, that's a good way to make money. Yeah. It's a good way to make money. So I remember I used to go in this field. He's give me blueberries. And I still the blueberries, but then the pigs thing too. So, but I was young. I was like 10, 11 years old then. Yeah. Man,
so you basically had an entrepreneur's mindset.
Yeah.
Pretty much. You knew you wanted to make money. You knew how to hustle and how to do it.
Yeah.
When did it switch?
When did it switch? I think on my 16th birthday, it was 16 or 17th birthday, we were all doing drugs, smoking weed, some other nefarious things. A friend of mine, approached me, he said, hey, look, if you want to get a pound of marijuana, which is a lot to a 16, 17-year-old, I get it for this amount. Counted my money up. I said, all right, let's do it. Give me a pound of weed. Like I said, I was 16, 17, and, a pound of weed, you could break it down in ounces, quarter ounces, quarters or whatever. So I would more than double my money, on that. And that was, anywhere between $1,000 and $1,200, for a pound. And for a kid 16, 17 years old to make double his money on that, that's not bad. And I could do that in a week. So at that age, started getting pounds of marijuana. It just started, getting that pound and just doing smallers, small amounts, yeah. But it just built up and built up. But yeah, that was, me, that was how I got started, selling drugs. And all of that is just, I just like being around it. I liked, when we were sitting around smoking from the bong, having a good time. People were drinking. This is what I try to tell people, at that time of life, it was innocent and fun.
Right.
No one was getting hurt. No one was getting in trouble. Everything was okay.
Yeah,
Everything was okay. It would change in time, but during that time of my life, it seemed pure, innocent fun. But it's just, what transpired after that, it was something I was, prepared for.
So your first time was a pound of weed.
Yep, the first time, I bought.
That was the first. So had you bought weed for your record use? Or?
Yeah, I think we bought just for regular use. I never bought it sold. Never bought it sold until that opportunity came to get a pound of weed. During my senior in high school, it was anywhere between 3 to 5 pounds every week.
Yeah, I was reading about that. That's pretty wild. I mean, that's not hey kid, you can sell this bag. We'll work it. We'll work up. Was this the guy with all the chains?
No, no. I don't know what he did. I don't know what he did for a living. How he made his money. But watching these bad guy movies, that's what they did. They wore all these gold chains, gold rings, stuff like that. That's what it was. So that's who I wanted to emulate. That's who I wanted to be. The bad guys, they got all the good-looking girls.
Right.
They had a good time. And for the most part, if you watch movies, the bad guys, they do good for a long time. Ultimately, they got in the movies where the good guy wins. But the bad guy, he's a badass dude.
Yeah,
he's a badass.
He's got a lot of cars.
I always say it, the first half of every drug dealer movie, I'm like, I need to sell drugs, and then it's the second Blow and those movies, and then at the end you're like, ultimately, I think I heard somewhere that the law may take a rest, but it never stops. It's just constant.
Yeah.
Success can be like a gift and a curse because you're moving more and more. You're now more vulnerable. More people know what you do. When did you first think okay, this is kind of all right? I'm in it.
When the feds start following you around. I mean, that's what I wanted to do. It wasn't that it thought it was in over my head. This is what I wanted to do. I didn't care about consequences. And I'm honest with you, I didn't start getting scared until the feds started following me around. I didn't care about what people thought of me. I didn't care about consequences. I didn't care about the police officers. Police officers didn't scare me. I sold drugs the time I was 16, 17, all the time, the whole time until, to the federal government, arrested me when I was 25 years old. So a span of, 6, 7, almost 8 years, selling drugs.
That's a pretty good run.
That's a good run. I mean, I got in trouble here and there, but I kept on getting out of trouble, with lawyers, some dumb luck. Getting away the best I can. I mean, so sometimes I didn't go to court. Sometimes I just, I made bond, didn't even go. Eventually it all caught up with me.
Yeah.
But for a long time, that's what I did. I mean, to avoid prosecution, I'd get these lawyers, to do what they can for me and, and I'd do my thing. So,
you said you would, you had warrants out in a bunch of different counties and you'd get pulled over. This was pre-computer database. So you would ask your name and your last name, Hollamon. You would give them. Tell them what you would do. I laughed when I read it.
So my last name is Hollamon, Hollamon. I think that's how you spell it. But anyhow, there's so many variations to spell my name. I mean, with the O's and A's, flip them all around. Okay? Not only that, I can take Hollamon, take an A out, put an I in there. Or take an O out, put an E in there. So taking all the vowels out and putting other vowels in there and then switching around, I counted up, there's 75 to 100 variations to spell my name. I couldn't keep up with it, and actually, it was an accident how it got started. Where one night I was drinking and I got a ticket, and the next morning I look at the ticket, and my name's Chad Eric Hollamon, but the cop wrote Eric Chad Hollamon, and he spelled my name all wrong, but it ended up creating a new identity for me.
Yeah.
in their system. So I'm like, okay, so that was the first identity that I did. If I move the Chad Eric around, then use my last name with different variations, there are so many ways to do it. And like you said, this is the centralized computer system.
Right.
So I'll literally get pulled over and, tell him a fake name. He goes, "Are you sure you're not this Chad Hollamon?" I was like, "Nah, man, I spell my name here." And then, he'll look it up, and sure enough, there'll be something else, from before. So yeah, it was, I guess more dumb luck, came my way. So yeah, I mean, even the court system, they were not able to have the same Chad Hollamon in the system because of that.
So when you were doing this and running and trying to not necessarily hide, but get away with different stuff, but did it become aggravating, or was it like a game?
A game.
Okay.
Yeah, it could aggravate. I mean, to me, it was just funny to me just see how much I got away with. Sometimes it caught up with me though. I'll tell you a funny story. So one time I get put over going about 80 miles an hour, but I don't use my Chad Eric Hollamon name. I use this other random name that I had, right? So I used the name, and he gave me the ticket and told me to sign the ticket. So I signed the ticket, went home. Well, the next morning, I get up, it's a state trooper, and he was like, "Good morning, Chad." I said, "Good morning. How you doing?" He goes, "You didn't tell me your name was Chad Eric Hollamon last night." And I was like, "Oh, you're right." He says, "But you signed your real name to it." So what happened is I gave him a fake name, but I signed my real name to the ticket. So he was able to find me like that. Man, I was like 17 years old, man. But yeah. So he got me good. He actually kind of laughed at it, but he took me to the jail, and I had to post another bond for it.
Encountering the law, was that something common in your family where you just had, like, you weren't afraid of them? I'm sure you respected the law, but at the same time, you weren't a square. Like some people, none of their parents have ever been arrested. They've never been arrested, so they get a speeding ticket, and it's like, oh my God, the world's over.
I tell you what, it's weird. Not weird, but I grew up in Emerald Isle. Mm-hmm. When we grew up, we had 10, 15 kids my age. There wasn't a lot of us. Now there's probably 5, 10 times that amount of kids, but there's very few of us. Now here's the problem. Growing up in a place called Emerald Isle in Emerald Isle that already had a kind of a bad reputation, they have the same amount of cops that work in the summertime as it is in the wintertime. These cops get bored. And when they get bored, they mess with me. I got accused of so much stuff when I was younger. I did a lot of dumb stuff when I was younger. But at the same time, I got accused of a whole lot more stuff that I didn't do. So it kind of turned me into a bad guy almost. Because they're constantly pulling me over. They're constantly going by my house. They're constantly harassing me. While I was growing up. Some of it was self-inflicted. I did some things, but some of the police officers in Emerald Isle, we started having a bad relationship from the get-go, and that was part of being from a small town. If you do anything and they catch wind of it, like I said, it was a lot of it self-inflicted. But at the same time, I got accused of this and that, and it kind of just turned it turned me into something. It didn't help. It didn't help one bit. So it gave me the mindset of us versus them, and that didn't help at all. I didn't respect authority, for a long time because of that. And I will say this, I've been out for a couple of years now. Some of these same, like Emerald Isle Police Department, the chief there, wonderful man. He runs a great department. And some of those guys at Emerald Isle, and girls at Emerald Isle, they've become my friends over the last couple of years. So it's been a full circle. This was a time when I was younger. I was going through a difficult time. But I just want to say that about the police department now.
Right.
But then it pitted me against them. In essence, they were my enemy back then.
It felt very personal.
Yeah, it did.
We're at a beach house one time talking about the Emerald Isle cops and stuff, and it was my friend Tommy Parker and my friend Eric Farnell. Were older, bunch of 18, 19-year-olds, and we're all 21. So we're sitting at a table, and finally the cops just come in. There's alcohol everywhere. And they look at us three and say, "You sit right there, don't you move. Don't you move." So we're sitting there, and then all of a sudden they start chasing all these little kids, and we look at each other, and we just walk out the back down the beach and walk away.
The cops come. You don't want to be the only 21-year-old when the cops come.
Yeah,
the alcohol to get there somewhere.
That's where they were in the wintertime.
Dead time then, huh?
Yeah, just deer horn dudes are sitting there trying to.
They didn't tell you how long to sit for, so kind of on them.
Yeah, it's their fault. Yeah. Right, how long? We've been there 2 minutes.
Until he's dealt with the law, man. He's dealing with the technicalities. But so you said in the book you talk about experimenting or using things like LSD. That's another level from weed, right?
It is, but when you're young and willing to try almost anything, I think LSD was probably the first thing I did after weed. I don't know how it is now, but in the 90s, LSD was pretty common. It was pretty common. It was fairly abundant, and you hear people have these crazy stories. You might hear somebody having a bad trip, but other than that, people they did this and that and just had a great time. And I was like, man, I want to try that one day. I want to try that one day. So I was 17 when I first tried LSD, and that was it from there. When I found an LSD source out of Raleigh, by a guy named Randa. Randa recently passed away, so I could use his name. Randa was a college guy from NC State. laid back dude, man. And I like I said, I was 17. He was probably 22, 23, and I go up there and he had these sheets of acid.
An LSD dealer was laid back? No way.
Yeah, so I mean that was, and not only we were talking earlier about how bulky marijuana is. I mean, if I pay a couple $1,000s for marijuana, I've got to sell this much stuff.
Right.
If I spend a couple $1,000 on LSD, it's like that. It's small.
And you could put it in like a book. And
Anything. Anything. And in LSD all day long, you double your money. I made a lot of friends during that time selling it, and then come back to school after the weekend, and people was, man, let me tell you what happened this weekend. And they would tell me this crazy story, and you know what I mean. It was we're doing LSD. Once again, I mean during that time, it was a step up from weed. Nobody was getting in trouble. No one was getting hurt. It was okay. So we started doing more stuff, and I started getting the mushrooms. A whole bunch of funny stories, doing mushrooms and. Of course, cocaine came after that. This was all in high school, doing all this stuff. Things started getting serious, though. I tell a story in the book about when I was tripping on acid, and my dad found my weed, and my dad took the weed from me, and I got a little trouble with the guy that I bought it from, and this guy was 100 pounds bigger than me. I didn't pay him. He found me one night. He beat my little butt. He beat my butt. So that was kind of my first consequence, from it.
Didn't you tell him, hey, if you want that money, talk to my dad?
That's what my dad told me. When my dad took the weed from me, he goes, you tell that scumbag you got it from to come see me if you want his money. I said, all right, okay, Dad, that's cool. So I told the drug dealer, hey, man, you want your money, man, you go get it from my dad. It didn't go over too well.
It didn't work as good as you thought it would.
No,
he beat your ass in this. Shit, I'm gonna beat his dad's ass.
We had people started getting in trouble when I was like 18 years old, my senior year in high school. People started getting in trouble then. People started getting arrested. That's when consequences started coming into play. Still, no one's getting hurt yet, physically or getting harmed because of the drug. But when people started getting arrested, people's lives started getting affected by it. When the cops, when they find drugs, they want to find out who you got it from. Right. My name started coming up left and right, and that was not good. But there was thankfully in high school, I never got arrested for drugs in Carteret County. Outside the county, I was got in trouble a couple times. One time in Georgia, one time in the mountains. I got caught with some cocaine. I was 18 years old. Yeah, I was 18 years old the first time I got caught with cocaine. And I got caught, with twice. Actually, I got caught with 3 times within 3 months. So, I started facing consequences. To have, post bond, get lawyers, go to court. It became pretty serious.
What was the most, out of all the drugs that you sold, the most lucrative?
Out of everything?
Yeah.
Cocaine by far.
Really?
Yeah, biggest demand.
It goes so fast. It goes so fast. I mean, and also think about it. If you take ecstasy, you might spend $50 to $100 to have a good time that night. If you're on cocaine, you might spend just on yourself a few hundred, snorting coke. So, like LSD, you spend $5-10 and you're good the whole night. Right. So yeah, so it's just when you get drugs. Just the cocaine, people tend to use more of that, and it's more expensive.
Remember the fruit stripe gum? Remember you have that?
Yeah.
Chew it. It lasts for 15 seconds. You have to pop another one. Yeah. So we're talking at around 18, and in the book it starts out with, and guys, check this book out. Like it is wildly entertaining, very well written, but you end up facing 40 years in prison.
Oh yeah.
Which, in the book you're talking about, man, they're damn murderers ain't getting this. I'm a nonviolent offender. At your height, maybe leading up to that, you got charged. What did you end up getting charged with?
First of all, I was facing life. I was facing life in prison. My sentencing guidelines were between 30 years and life in prison. So I got middle range, 40 years. But at the same time, whenever I was, getting sentenced, it was all the same to me. 30 years, life in prison, I'm never getting out. That's kind of, that's what I thought. How much was I ultimately responsible for? federal government has this weird table ratio they do with drugs. And they do this to make you sound worse, okay? What they do is they do a backlog of all the drugs that I supposedly sold, what we call ghost dope. So you might not have caught me with it. Hey, but if Job and Sally over here said, well, I bought this from them, it all piles up. So ultimately, I was charged with cocaine, ecstasy, marijuana, steroids, GHB. I've been some other small ones in there, but that's the main one. And the table that they came up, they use a marijuana equivalent table. It jacks it up more. So my equivalency ratio was 90 tons of marijuana. 90 tons. Jesus. So it's insane. I'm like, I sold some weed, but I didn't sell that much weed.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So, but what they do is, like 1 kilo of Coke might be this much marijuana. And it's just jacked up. And they do that to make it sound worse.
Right.
And instead of saying, I think I was ultimately charged with 200 kilos of cocaine. That's what I was charged with. That's a lot of cocaine, but it wasn't 90 tons of marijuana. But that's what it is. And that's just the ratio that they use. I don't think it's right, but that's the federal government for you. And whatever they wrote, I had to wear this shit.
Yeah, it's like, no, it wasn't 90. It was only 10 tons. All right. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm not disputing I did it.
Yeah.
But you were charged essentially as a kingpin, right?
Yep. Under kingpin status. And me and my girlfriend were watching TV this morning, and the kingpin from Colombia is facing 20 years in prison. 20 years. I'm like, I got 40, and he's facing 20? What the hell is going on here? No, but the laws are messed up. Now, the reason why they do this is because we have extradition treaties, right? What's his name? Not Pablo, but El Chapo. He got, I think, 30 years. I got more time than El Chapo. But this is what they do. They're saying, okay, we can get this guy from Colombia, but we got to sign this extradition treaty saying we can't give him more than 20 years. Now, this guy that just got arrested, yesterday, he was responsible for over 1 million kilos of cocaine. He profited $1.5 billion, facing 20 years. But here I was facing life in prison for my 200 keys. And I had some other drugs there too. But for me to be facing life in prison with no violence, with no drugs, with no guns whatsoever, I'm facing life in prison because how these mandatory minimum laws are set up. So I kind of laughed this morning when this guy's getting off the plane and all these marshals and DEA agents around him. He's facing 20 years. Man, I did 18 years in federal prison, man. It's a bit insane how these laws are set up, but I put myself in this situation, and that's why whenever I whether I was going through, it was on me. Ultimately, I'm glad now that I can look back and kind of say, man, it is messed up. But during what I was going through, I had to do that because of what I did, my decisions. I put myself in a position for people to set me up. I put myself in a position for the DA to arrest me. I put myself in a position for the prosecutor to want life in prison. And I put myself in a position for the judge to give me 40 years in prison. That was me. That's why, I ultimately had to do federal prison time.
You talked about guns. Was there a point where you had to carry a gun or feared for?
Because 90 tons of weed, man, you gotta have some.
Some big trucks, anyhow. No, and that's what kind of made my case unique when the judge did sentence me. Whenever I was going through preliminary hearings and stuff, and he was, Mr. Hollamon, your case is kind of unique because you have a lot of drugs, but we have 0 weapons in your case. Not one handgun was found on your case, and it's unique. And he asked me, "Why is this?" I said, "I didn't like guns." I don't like guns. I had a grandfather get killed by a gun. I'm scared of guns. I didn't like it. A couple of the Mexicans that I bought drugs from, they came around me one time with guns, and I told them, in the nicest way possible, well, in the real nice way possible, please, sir, don't come down. I told them, I said, look, you don't need to come here with these guns.
Right.
And they're like, well, Chad, in the thick accent, Chad, we go to bad places. I said, look, this is not a bad place. I invite you to my home. We can do business. Please take the guns away. So they did. They made them, to take the guns away. I always felt when you brought the element of having guns, it changes it up. It changes it up. And, thankfully I didn't have guns because I might have got life in prison.
Right.
And, and that was just who I was. And, all my co-defendants, I was hell-bent, no weapons. We're making money. We're not violent guys. We're all friends. Nobody have a gun. And we do you go with that, and then thankfully no one had one, and no one got more time because of it. But yeah, the judge said my case was unique to have this amount of drugs, and no weapons.
Do you find yourself any bitter with the new drug laws? Like, marijuana is now becoming more legalized. Is there any kind of like bitterness because you were dealing 90 tons?
Yeah. No.
Out of wasn't a red Corvette?
Silver Corvette.
Silver Corvette. Man, that's a big trunk.
That's a big trunk with 90 tons.
Well, I had a trailer, man. Okay. No, am I bitter? Not one bit. Because I have friends that are still incarcerated. I got friends doing life in prison for marijuana only, and they got caught with a lot of marijuana. But for a man to not die in the comfort of his own bed because of some marijuana, they need some get back. And one of my friends, a guy from Cuba, he's been locked up 20-some years. I want him to get out. And I've been a big proponent for him. I've been talking to lawmakers. I've been, pushing for him to be released, and hopefully, under the Biden administration, hopefully some things will change under that. Now, but saying that, I mean, some of these drugs like fentanyl,
it's a different world.
It's a different world. They should be a high prison sentence for some of these, people doing it, because it is killing me. Marijuana's not killing anybody. But yeah, I'm not bitter at all, about these laws changing. I mean, it's just.
I mean, personally, I think it's a good thing because you can regulate, so we don't have to have the fentanyl, laced with whatever people are buying. So
yeah.
So even though I don't use, it's still.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand this fentanyl stuff. Why is it going around so much? And some of my clients that I talk to, they're like, why is it so bad? So I tell them, I said, look, I can get a kilo of cocaine for $25,000, and I can make an extra $15,000 off of it. But if I could pay for a kilo of fentanyl between $20,000 and $50,000, I can make $1 million off that. So that's why it's so bad now, because the profit margin is so much. If you can find it, it just makes sense if someone get a kilo of fentanyl versus a kilo of heroin, and that's what they do. They get that fentanyl, and they try to put just enough in it where people catch a buzz. These drug dealers aren't meaning to kill people, but they're not scientists.
They're not chemists.
They don't know how to put the dosage out, but they say you should be doing it all because it kills people. One of my clients, he just got arrested. He said he's 20 years in federal prison for fentanyl. And thankfully no one died under him, but he was getting these pills, and he was putting it there, and he was pressing it, but they were just guessing what it should be. I mean, they were just getting like a Xanax or something, just putting like a little bit in there. Thankfully nobody died, but that's what these people are doing, man. It's playing with fire.
Yeah,
it's playing with fire, and I hate that this drug has killed so many people. We had 4 overdoses last week or 2 weeks ago in Carteret County. We had 2 deaths. It's definitely an issue.
I think that's the most in trouble with weed is like if you got any snacks, or it's going to make you drive about. You're going to get 15 under the speed limit, and Cheetos don't stay at a chance. This
really safe for a couple hours.
At your peak, what was the most cash you had on hand?
Cash?
If you can discuss that.
Probably the most cash I've seen at one time, about $750,000 at one time. I think during the course of my conspiracy, I think it was, well over $2 million. I had weeks where I'd make an average of $30,000-$40,000
a week.
A week, yeah.
In your early 20s.
Yeah, in my early 20s, yeah. And there was a few weeks that I actually made $100,000 a week. So, yeah, and to be 23, 24 years old, yeah, you could, like you said, you couldn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
During that time.
How many people did you have working for you at one particular time?
So you said there was 30, 40
I ended up having 30, 40 co-defendants. Yeah. I always kept 4 or 5 main guys. Those 4 or 5 main guys, they were the trusted ones. They knew where my stash houses were. I had 30-some co-defendants, but if I dropped, a kilo of cocaine at the University of Chapel Hill, there's no telling how many people, hands that went through.
Right.
And for a while, that's kind of how I was doing. I mean, if I got 10 kilos of coke, drop one off at NC State, drop one off at Chapel Hill, drop one off at Wilmington. Kind of just go from there. So I don't know how people under me, but I always kept 4 or 5 main guys around me, and I try to keep them separated.
It's a cash-only business, obviously.
Oh no, I took Cash App, but no, this is before.
Getting paid in Chad coin. But so that's another, you're a prisoner of your success because you have so much cash and there's only so many, you hear stories of laundering. And
yeah.
How did you learn how to do that?
I didn't learn. That's why I got caught doing it. No, I mean, I told you I watched these bad guys on Miami Vice and stuff. They took book bags of money to the Caribbean island. So you know what I did? I took book bags of money to the Caribbean island. That's what you're supposed to do, okay? No, but I mean, and honestly, that's what I did. I went to Aruba, Jamaica, a couple of islands, and I would just open up bank accounts down there. That's what I thought you're supposed to do with it. I would open up safety security boxes at banks, things like that. That was kind of my way of thought I was hiding. I didn't hide very good.
It's wild. I mean, what does $750,000 in cash look like?
Like how big is it? I mean, it was 120. I mean, it's not really bigger than that rare. I mean, just figure. I mean, you could throw $750,000, on this table. I talk about in the book. My biggest drug deal was, $250,000. $250,000 is what I used to purchase 50,000 pills of ecstasy. Okay, 50,000 pills of ecstasy, not very big. It's not very big. I mean, it's literally a bag about that big and about that high. It's not large like you might think it would be. For 50,000 to be $250,000, and for cocaine, the most I would get at one time was 10 kilos for 150,000, which is 15 a piece. For cocaine, I would charge 22 to 25,000 a key for it. And for ecstasy, I was paying $5 a piece. I would charge anywhere between $7 and $9, depending on how many someone got, or if I fronted them, or if they had cash on them. At the peak of my game, that's probably where I was at, and that was 2002, some of 2003.
And you were getting this from Mexico.
It came from Mexico, but I got it from Mexicans, from the cocaine.
Yeah.
They have different cities that they go in. I mean, I got mine in rural North Carolina, believe it or not, of all places. But it came from Atlanta, Houston, then from Mexico. There was this, I knew the pipeline that it was, and I could have got cheaper if I went to Atlanta. Could have got even more cheaper if I went to Houston. But I was fortunate to be hooked up with some guys, in rural North Carolina where I didn't have to drive that far. They didn't have to drive that far.
Got the Daniel Boone in.
That's solid vague, too. You mean North Carolina?
It was North Carolina, man. Did you ever have a deal where you're like, this is sketchy?
Believe it or not, I talk about a lot of funny drug deals in there. Mm-hmm. Like the first time I ever bought cocaine was from he ended up being a great friend of mine. But the whole time I'm going to get this kilo of cocaine, I'm calling this girl how to get there, and she's telling me, and she's getting me lost every time. This goes on for like an hour. And finally, I said, "Hey, girl, just tell me exactly where you are." And, she couldn't do that, so I had to call him, and he got me there. But when I got there, I was just so mad at this girl. And, he was out of town, the guy was supposed to get it from, so I'm going to get it from his girlfriend. I'm going to let her have it. So I walk through the door, and I know it's her house because the car is there, the chair is there, and then I ring a doorbell, and when she comes through, I'm going to let her have it. But when she answers the door, she's got this big old cage on her neck. What happened is she's had a whiplash or something, and she got in a real bad car wreck. But not only that, is she's pregnant. She's pregnant. So I've been arguing with this girl the whole time about how to get this house. I mean, I've been calling her every name in the book. I'm mad because she's wasting my time. And I get there, and this girl, this big old contraption on her head, and then she also is pregnant. So I'm like, I apologize to her. And we ended up being great friends after that. But a lot of times it was funny. There was some scary things, some scary times that I kind of walked into. Sketchy circumstances. I remember one time I was so coked up. I've been doing cocaine for like 2 days straight, and I these Mexicans that I talked to, they don't speak English. So when we communicate, I'm just like I can tell these little words here and there. But I pulled this drug deal one time, and when I get there, I'm like, ugh. And I can't talk. What happened is I was all cooked up, and I took some Xanax pills to counteract to try to get right. But when I did that, it threw everything off. So I couldn't walk right. I couldn't talk. These men look at me like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah."
Stevie.
So I mean, we ended up getting through, man. But it was just some funny ass crap that I went through, you know.
Yeah.
That's the problem with drugs, man.
I tell you what, this could easily be a movie.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
And a comedy one at that.
you have a personality. You seem like a guy who'd never met a stranger.
Yeah.
Would that be pretty accurate?
Yeah, and
that
I think-
definitely helped you in this.
A lady just made a comment on my on Amazon about my book. She says, "What got me in trouble was my good traits."
Too trusting.
Well, yeah, too trusting. Not only that is, you know, my personality that I had. It was a good thing, but it ended up being a bad thing because, like you said, I didn't know a stranger. Right. It tended, you know, get me in some trouble. Yeah, let me see if I can't, you know, what she said. It kind of blew my mind. Some of Chad's most admirable traits are ironically the same traits that landed him in so much trouble when he was young and he didn't understand them or how to control them. Bravery and courage versus irrational lack of fear and consequences. Leadership and friendship versus intimidation and associates. Self-preservation versus self-destruction. And, you know, I love when people, you know, leave good comments, but when somebody says something like that, when they can, you know, read the words and, you know, and decipher it like that and break down things, it makes me, you know, see things different, man. And, you know, for someone to get that. So, yeah, some of the things that, you know, help me wouldn't be the things that hurt me at the same time.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, on that first prison bus ride, there were a lot of strangers that didn't care one another.
I'm curious, if you could go back and do things different that would have made it so your empire continued to grow, you wouldn't have got caught, what would you have done differently? Or is it just a matter of time?
One way or another, it's going to end. It's going to end, and then the more you carry it, the worse it's going to be. When I was in prison, I was okay with it because I knew consequences. I knew one day I had to pay the price for what I did. So when I'm, you know, in that prison cell, when I'm doing time, I was okay with it. I didn't want to be in prison. Don't get me wrong, but it was a price I was willing to pay to do what I wanted to do for a few years. And you know, I'm a very spiritual person, and I'm not saying, you know, God said this to me, that to me, but I felt it. When I was doing my dirt, you know, making money and having a good time, I felt that thing on my shoulder. Chad, you're going to pay the price one day. You're going to pay the price one day, you know? And I'm just like, I know it. It was a burden, but at the same time, I was like, you know, whatever I got to pay. You know, right now, I can have a blast. I can drive whatever car I want to drive. I can go wherever I want to go. I can do whatever I want to do. I'm okay with that right now.
Kind of surrender to your fate ahead of time. So it's like, and I think this is a perfect segue, guys. So part 2, we're going to have coming up with Chad Hollamon. I'm not even going to try and spell his name. There's so many of him out there.
So many variations.
But we're going to pick up the next episode on the day the sentence was handed down, which is how your book starts.
We'll see you on the next one.